SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Here's Sammy the Shovel here to tell you to call before you dig.
A lot of homeowners are working hard to create a loving home. Whether it's expanding that crowded deck, maybe a swimming pool, good times start with these additions. And that's why we respectfully ask you to first call 811 and have your utilities properly marked before you dig. It saves you from injury and expense. It's the law, and it's just the right thing to do. So call 811 before you dig. Remember us for your next project. Just call 811.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday Eve. Well, we're almost there, and I saw the weather forecast this morning, and there's a 10 handle in front of the high temperature reading for every day as far as the eye can see. So 100 degrees. That's pretty dang hot last time I checked. Speaking of hot, inflation is cooling a bit. So we got the inflation report yesterday for the consumer price index. And the core inflation, that is a crazy measurement, but it's the inflation, it's the measurement of the adjustment in pricing of a basket of goods, excluding volatile, as they like to describe it, food and energy. And it came in rather tepid, 2.5%, respectively. That's pretty dang close, Rhino, to the Fed's target of 2%, month over month, 0.1%. The headline number, that includes food and energy, 3.4%. So I think we talked about it, the futures markets on what the Fed's going to do with interest rates, pretty much leaning into no change in September. Well, this morning we got the data on the producer price index, and that, of course, is a measurement of the price of goods in the as input into the production process. So that number came in a little tame as well, and so the stocks are liking it, especially growth stocks, which are typically the big name technology companies that are traded on the NASDAQ. So the data from the producer price index showed prices rising by less than expected. That's another positive sign for investors after the CPI we got yesterday said that inflation was pretty much in check. The oil prices fell a bit today, which is good news, and that's because the president says that he's pivoting from an active military campaign to one that focuses on economic pressure on Iran and, of course, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I got to tell you, there's lots of conflicting data on exactly what the traffic picture is, talking about the shipping traffic through the Strait. You can't seem to find consensus of exactly the number of ships and the amount of oil that is being transported through the strait. It accounts for, certainly before the launch of attacks 4.5 months ago, the oil that moves through the strait accounts for about 20% of global supply, and at about roughly 20 million barrels. It's an easy thing to keep up with because across the world we consume slightly more than 100 million barrels a day, 20 million flowing through the strait. Most folks in the industry say it looks like 5 million are flowing through there. So that's keeping oil prices somewhat elevated. And the government also is informing to expect there to be a continued shortage of oil through the end of 2027, which means prices are likely to stay elevated if that all pans out based on that. But I think there's a lot of worry about diesel. U.S. diesel inventory just reported this week that indicate that diesel is at an all-time low in terms of inventory on hand. The average retail price for a gallon of diesel, $5.32, according to AAA. That was published on Tuesday. That's up from $4.88 per gallon a month ago, $3.71 a year ago. So, and the factor here is Ukraine's attack on a Russian refinery and a Houthi attack on a Saudi refining facility that refines and produces diesel. So diesel inventories have slumped to the lowest for this time of year in 30 years. That, according to Reuters. And the U.S. Energy Information Administration says it expected some oil production in the Middle East to remain shut in well into 2027. Speaking of Ukraine, don't know if you saw this, Rhino, a bit of news that is disconcerting, and that is that the U.S. and Ukrainian forces conducted a military exercise, and unfortunately it didn't go well for U.S. Army troops. They faced off against Ukrainian drones. This was at a military exercise in Germany earlier this year. This is just now being reported. Apparently, Ukrainian drone units easily spotted and defeated U.S. troops and armored vehicles and other assets. And so this shows our vulnerability to drone attacks.
Somewhat.
Well,
there are certain aspects of wargaming that, unless you just kind of dig into it or sit with it for a while, it's kind of counterintuitive. But once it clicks, it makes sense. Because in wargaming, you're not just wargaming the exercise for your offensive capabilities. You're wargaming everything. That includes your officer corps, that includes your logistics, that includes your medical teams. So in wargaming, a lot of times they will set up losing scenarios purposefully to allow the medics to get practice, to allow the logistics people to get practice, to allow everybody to get runs in besides just the people pulling the trigger.
I hear you.
Because you have all these stories that have come out historically about, oh, well, U.S. against China in this war game, they lost like this, and U.S. versus this country in this war game, they lost like that. And you always hear about losing in war games and exercises. And that's why, to a great extent, is because a lot of them, they draw the rules up in favor of the opponents so that other people get a chance to.
The military is expressing concerns. I'll just say that. And you cannot deny that Iranians' drones have been extremely effective in a real war situation. A real war situation. They got nothing. Their military's been decimated, yet they're still able to use these very inexpensive drones to cause harm and damage and posing a threat. I just think it's the evolution of war. It's digital warfare. We've known this is coming. It's not like we get blindsided by this. We knew this was the direction that war was headed as far as how it would be conducted for a long time. What I hope is that if, in fact, vulnerabilities were exposed here, is that our military responds, regroups, retools, retrenches, because this is definitely coming. And what it does, to a great extent, Rhino, it's kind of like what all this novel cloud technology has done, where I remember when I got in the industry, only the wealthiest, most well-heeled companies could afford computer systems. And then all this stuff was invented, personal computers, data centers, cloud services. Now, even a one-man company, a one-person company could have access to that same powerful technology. I think what this shows is the big, rich United States doesn't really have as much of an advantage in digital warfare just because even a Ukraine can acquire it. And it's something we need to be at least incorporating into our strategy, our planning. Makes you wonder why we need to spend another $500 billion on annual Department of War spending. Coming right back, we've got Leah Long at 10:35 with the National Federation of Independent Small Business.
So when are you going to check that thing off your to-do list?
Right, that. I don't know. How about next week?
How about now?
Or I could do it later, right?
No more putting it off. Do it now so you don't forget. You want this and have for a while.
You're right. I want this.
You deserve this, and it can help you in the long run. There, I just logged on to homescc.edu. We're getting you registered right now.
Wait. Hold up. I thought you had to show up on site to register at Homes.
You can do either one. You know that career you talk about all the time? The life you dream about? It starts today. How does that famous quote go? Please don't. The secret to getting ahead is
getting started.
Fall classes start August 17th. Register at a campus near you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 3:30, or right now at homescc.edu. And remember, your tuition could be free with a 20 on your ACT.
Holmes Community College.
No place like Holmes. At Key Constructors, our mission is to build a legacy that will stand the test of time through hard work, dedication, and pursuing excellence. Key Constructors is a heavy civil construction company, a leader in the bridge construction world. Our goal is to provide a positive work environment for you to grow personally and in your career. We are proud of who we are and what we do, making it happen one bridge at a time. Come join our team of Black Label Bridge Builders. Check out Key Constructors on Facebook and other social media platforms and keyconstructors.com.
Before your heating or air conditioning unit goes south, call our friends at Pure Air Consultants, your local day and night dealer. Tony and his team of professionals at Pure Air Consultants have been serving Central Mississippi for more than 21 years. Contact us today for free estimates or second opinion on replacements, or even to schedule regular maintenance to keep your unit performing at its best. Special financing offers are available too with Pure Air Consultants, your day and night dealer, online at mypureairconsultants.com. That's mypureairconsultants.com.
Hello, I'm Gary Jolly from the Tractor Store. LS Tractor understands your passion for the land, and just like you, LS Tractor is committed to excellence and superior products. LS Tractor comes with a long list of standard features that are unmatched by other brands, and backed with the LS commitment to provide exceptional customer service and satisfaction. You get a lot more for your money with the LS Tractor. Come to the Tractor Store in Richland to experience the LS difference. The Tractor Store in Richland.
Pour yourself a cup of coffee and get the Magnolia State's most important news of the day. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
just as we were talking about that report on it right now on this current block on the Fox Business, and General Jack Keane, he's a regular guest on the program. He's talking about it. I don't know. We don't have the volume up what they're saying, but I'll just say this, that we have to at least recognize that warfare is changing, that it's becoming more digital.
Well, that's the problem. It constantly changes.
Yeah, but is our Pentagon or our strategists considering those changes, factoring that into our strategy? Used to be you just got to have a bunch of planes, a bunch of boats, and bombs, and of course,
well, I mean, if you look
military
at
personnel.
The history of warfare, you had World War I with horses still in the cavalry, and the introduction of tanks and aerial warfare. But the main big budget items between World War I and World War II, it was believed the next wars would be fought with battleships, where you just roll up and shoot them over the horizon. Never even have to worry about it. But war changed between World War I and World War II, and aircrafts became much more robust and much more capable. So they became a major facet of World War II. And then from World War II into Korea, there was very little changes, but war evolved.
Sure.
And things changed, and you no longer could use the same tactics from World War II on the Korean Peninsula. It just didn't work. You couldn't use tanks in the same way. You couldn't have supply lines running the same way. And so, again, from Korea to Vietnam, cavalry becomes helicopters, and helicopters become a major implement of war. And it just keeps changing time over time over time because technology keeps changing.
Sure. It's innovation is what it is. But I think the takeaway to me of today, where we are today, is that, again, all of this technology, such as drones, is affordable, is accessible to even small nations relative to superpowers. So it does tend to level the playing field a bit, and that needs to be considered, needs to be regarded in our strategy. We can't just assume, well, we sunk all the boats and we bombed all the airports and we got no more planes. Still have access to weapons, essentially, that aren't very expensive, that could inflict a bunch of harm and damage. And that's, I guess, today's weapon are drones. China, as you know, is working on robots, sort of invincible robots to replace humans on the battlefield. I don't know how close that is to becoming a reality of what could actually truly fight in a war, but it's something to think about and consider in our strategy and our planning long term.
With what's publicly available on their robots, it's basically just a re-engineered version of what American forces were using towards the end of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Where instead of sending someone into an obvious kill zone, you send in the robot to check and make sure that, that's a kill zone, don't go in there.
Yeah. You just know that, right? But you need systems to detect that as well. So I think this was a good thing, honestly. It was valuable in that if there was anything that happened that opened eyes, that exposed vulnerabilities, right, go back and incorporate that into your planning. Simple as that.
I mean, much in the same way other countries came to the U.S. during Iraq and Afghanistan for expertise and training on fighting insurgencies and fighting terrorists. It only makes sense to go to the Ukrainians and ask about drone warfare because they've been in the trenches with it. They've been the ones innovating for years now.
Yeah. But a nation like Iran can't compete with a superpower like the U.S. in terms of building these gigantic ships, for example, or having a super advanced, sophisticated fleet of aircraft. They're just not capable of doing that. In fact, we sell ours to our allies. And, of course, our adversaries equip their allies, who are also our adversaries with their stuff. Iran, right? We're finding out is largely being supplied by China.
Or it was.
Is that been discontinued at this point, or we?
I mean, China's not going to send more of their best stuff just to get blown up.
No, I agree, because that is possible, and I think
now, there are probably still intact supply chains for drone production and missile production, but those have been limited dramatically since the start of the conflict.
Yeah, I agree. It's just this was interesting that it got exposed in national news yesterday, this exercise, and I don't think it's anything to just fret over. You explained that, and I was aware that to a great extent that stuff's kind of scripted intentionally. I get that, but I think on the other hand,
you ended the last segment with why do they need more money? That's why they'll argue.
Oh, it's no doubt about it. Oh, we've got to modernize everything, right? But does it not make you at least wonder? Do we need all these big ships? I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, and don't pretend to be. But you certainly can't deny the fact that you got adversaries who don't have big ships that are still able to inflict harm. And how do we mitigate that? How do we neutralize that? And that's maybe new strategy in fighting wars that
I would say
we haven't had to deal with in the past.
The determining factor on whether or not you need the big ships is to decide what kind of war you want to fight.
Okay. But you may not have a choice.
But if you park a ship off the shore and just continue bombarding until it's just dust, then it makes sense to have a ship. If you're just going to park it offshore to kind of be a deterrent, and it's constantly having to fight off basically the equivalent of electronic gnats and drones coming at it and missiles coming at it, then what's the point of parking the target out there?
Agree. And I don't know, this may be far-fetched, crazy, but could a drone deploy a nuclear weapon? I don't know. I mean, you can't take anything off the table and say that's just not possible. That's
it would be highly unlikely just because of power density.
At this point, I agree.
Nukes are heavy.
I get it, and wouldn't be able to carry those things around. That's right. Super dense in material. Speaking of ships, did you see this report? The USS Lincoln. It departed San Diego, big naval base, of course, San Diego, November 21st of last year. Has been at sea now for 8 months, including what the Navy reported as a record-breaking stretch without a port stop. And so family members of sailors aboard this ship are sounding the alarm, if you will, over what they describe as a mental health crisis unfolding on the ship at sea. It's being reported that multiple sailors have attempted to go overboard during their unusual, protracted deployment to the Middle East. Man, this is terrible to see. So there was an interview with a mother of one of those sailors, a San Diego, the wife of one of those sailors, reported to the Navy Times that her husband attempted to jump overboard, now on medical hold. He was repeatedly overextended before the incident. Quote, he's scared. He thinks he'll get a dishonorable discharge, and just because he was burnt out, his 13-year career is ruined just like that. That's not fair. That's not right. That's not what he should be worrying about right now. That's what she said. So there's other reports of other incidents. I hope the Navy addresses this. This is interesting that this made it into the mainstream news here in the last couple of days, and hopefully we will address that. Incredible. On the political front, some people may find this shocking, Rhino, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, better known as AOC, has now surpassed Gavin Newsom as the Democrat presidential favorite on Polymarket. I'm telling you, these prediction sites are something, aren't they? They can generate lots of buzz. She has surpassed Newsom. Absolutely incredible. I can't fathom her being the president of the United States, but I would say ignore at our own peril. Coming right back with Leah Long, the National Federation of Independent Small Business, Mississippi and Louisiana Director. Stay with us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Shake, 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 Sinora, shake your body liner. Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time. Work, 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 Sinora, work your body liner. Work, 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 Sinora.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We are in the Element Wealth Studio. We are pleased to welcome now Leah Long, the Mississippi and Louisiana Director for the National Federation of Independent Small Business. Hey, Leah, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on today.
All right, so give us an update. What are the sentiments out there in small business land?
You know, in our latest jobs report, it did show that employment has picked up, but kind of always say it's a catch-22. You know, right now, primary spending is kind of based on big projects that are going on in Mississippi and just going on nationally, too. You know, we're talking about Louisiana-Mississippi state line. We talked about this last time. The new data centers coming in, people employed from both states there. But when you think about that, you've got to have the right labor, the right skilled worker available. And so that's an issue for these small business owners. They're anticipating that they're going to have jobs. Business is going to pick up, but they're not going to have the workers available for it.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten some rather tepid inflation reports. We got the CPI report yesterday, and we got the PPI report today. So looks like overall that's relatively good news. I mean, it was in line with expectations, but I'm still hearing people talk about the price of fuel, in particular diesel.
Yeah, definitely. Inflation, you know, it's improved a little bit, but it's still affecting these business owners. Just like you said, fuel, gas prices in general. I mean, it eats away at their bottom line. You know, how do they, pass that on? Do they pass it on to their consumers, or do they just eat away? And so that's affecting it, trying to find qualified workers. We talk about the health insurance world. We talk about insurance in general. It's just driving the cost of owning and operating a business.
Yeah, no doubt. I've attended an event a couple of days ago where there were some state senators present. It was just kind of a social event. And one of them spoke and said that what he's hearing from his constituents is that their number one concern as we head into the midterms is not just inflation and cost of living, but specifically health insurance, cost of health care, topping the list. Are you finding the same, hearing that from your members?
Absolutely. In general, we kind of talk about healthcare, and these small business owners that can offer health insurance, they do it. Some don't. I mean, it kind of goes into your compensation package. You want to keep your employees employed. You want to make them happy. And so the ones that can do it, but I mean, it has continued to rise throughout the years, and you kind of have to make a decision. Do I continue to do this? Does it eat away? Does it affect my capital? Reinvesting, am I going to invest in health insurance, continue to pay the premiums? I think it's something at a federal level and state level we've really got to continue to focus on.
Yeah, and our insurance commissioner, Mike Chaney, he has announced that he is really pushing for short-term plans. You're aware that the enhanced subsidies in the ACA exchanges for purchasing coverage through the so-called Obamacare marketplace, those have expired. And those were implemented in Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. Those have now expired. And so the expectation is a lot of people will not re-up their insurance in the individual market in the exchanges. And, of course, in the community of small businesses, many of them have fewer than 50 employees. they are not able to offer group coverage, and they expect that their employees are going to obtain coverage on their own. Many of them shop in the exchanges, but the estimate is that we could lose about 70,000 off the rolls here in Mississippi, which would mean that 70,000 Mississippians and Mississippi families wouldn't have health insurance.
Yeah, I mean, it's an overall picture. Of course, we talk about cost. It's bad for business, but it's just bad for Mississippians in general. You got to look at it from the business standpoint, but also just what are we going to do with 70,000 people without health insurance? It affects the quality of life. And so I think that's something as we continue to move into midterms, as we address next session. It'll be January before we know it. The year's flying by. So we'll be back in Jackson preparing. And so I think that's something these legislators and just congressional members have to think about. I tell everybody every time they go, it's recess right now. So your congressional members at home, go visit them, see them, go gripe at them and tell them exactly what's happening in your business. It's their time to hear about it.
Yeah, our commissioner's talking about spinning up some short-term plans that don't have to adhere to all the standards and the regulations from the Affordable Care Act, such as the ability of an insurer to reject an applicant for pre-existing conditions. Can't do that on longer-term standard plans, but these are short-term in nature, designed to insure someone who maybe is between jobs, can't afford COBRA, just looking for some sort of short-term stopgap plan. I don't know whether or not this will get off the ground, but it's certainly something our insurance commissioner is talking about, just as a way to address this particular issue. I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm just hearing this all over the place from consumers and small businesses alike.
Absolutely. You got to have something to fill in the gap there, because it's not always going to be able to have, your employer. You may work for an employer that offers it now, but they may not be able to, just to the cost of doing business next year. So you've got to have that. And, Commissioner Cheney's doing well, and I'm hopeful that it'll get off the ground and we'll be able to kind of put some stuff in the middle until we can address the bigger issue of it all.
The president a couple of days ago announced support for indexing capital gains to inflation, and also sort of changing the way we tax gains on the sale of a primary residence. Right now, there's an exemption of part of the gain for an individual or joint filers, but he wants to adjust that so that any house sold that has a value of less than $2 million would not be subject to tax on the gain. And then from an indexing capital gains to inflation, that's something that I fully support, by the way. I wish we would have put that in the one big beautiful bill, but sometimes the numbers don't always work out. He's trying to get this done before the midterms. Is that something you think your members would support?
I definitely, initiative-wise, I think so. We haven't fully, poll day, of course, have happened this week. But, they've got to continue to make it more business-friendly and keeping money in people's pockets. And I think if we can continue to address that on all levels, they're going to be in support of that. The small business owners want to keep their money, want to keep the gains,
sure,
basically reinvest that. And they need that right now. They're coming off a hard couple of years. We've had a lot of issues, but a lot of tax issues, federal issues, overstep issues. And so anything that can go back to make it better for their business, they're going to do it.
Yeah, and it could affect a liquidation event as well, right? Some sort of business exit would affect that. I know that would be certainly welcome. You're probably aware that here in the state of Mississippi, the sale of a company that's domiciled here, stock registered here, to the owners, or even a private company, is exempt from state income tax. So, which I think is good policy. I'm not sure if that exists in Louisiana as well, but it's a good incentive to launch and locate a business here if you have the idea and the plan to exit.
Absolutely, and we were talking about that. I did an interview in Louisiana, and they were comparing the states, Mississippi and Louisiana. I said, Mississippi, they've been very fiscally responsible. They are moving the needle to make it more business friendly. And of course, Louisiana, you talk to them, they're like, "Oh, so are we." But
yeah,
I mean, we got to keep it that way in the South. There's a lot of people that do business in both states, and as long as both states continue to move that needle and make it business friendly, it'll be better for everyone.
We need to be promoting. Yes, we need to be promoting that in our respective states, right? Because in the other parts of the country, certainly the deep blue state, they're going in the other direction. They're proposing new taxes every day.
Yeah, we need to be a leader when it comes to it in Mississippi and Louisiana, a leader of how to grow your business and make it better for everybody in the state.
It's a factor. I mean, I said it the other day. Capital seeks where it is put to work in the most efficient manner, and that includes taxes.
Absolutely. And then continuing on the path of lowering the personal income tax rate in Mississippi, I mean, that's a huge positive thing. These business owners are planning for that, whether you're going to open a business now or you want to open it in 2 or 3 years. I mean, you're thinking about that. Is that rate going to go down? Hopefully go to zero one day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the hope, that's the plan, and that, of course, that legislation is enacted and it is set sail. I think a lot of people would like to see it happen sooner rather than later. I am a bit concerned about the possible decline in revenues. Overall, we're still able to handle it with the increase in sales taxes offsetting the decrease in income taxes. We're phasing that out. But worried about expenses going up, though, Leah?
Unfortunately, yeah. But, I think they've done well the last couple years of, how to keep the expenses low and make it work. And that's something I love about Mississippi. Louisiana, I wish would get on that train too, become more fiscally responsible on the government side of administration.
Yeah.
But we're going to see what happens.
Sounds good. Well, we got the midterms coming up, and, of course, that could have a big impact on federal policies. That is a big issue for small businesses. But always good talking to you. Appreciate you coming on.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Leah Long, Mississippi and Louisiana Director for the National Federation of Independent Small Business, has been our guest. We're taking a break right now. Coming back to the Element Wealth studio. After the top of the hour, it's Senator Bart Williams. Stay with us.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The Eagles bumping us into this segment. John in Pontotoc says, rumor control takes over on long, never-ending deployments. Unlike World War II or Korea, the sailors and soldiers are on a time frame, a lot of highs and lows. Rhino, what John's talking about that, we shared a story about reports that some sailors that are deployed on the USS Lincoln, which is in the Middle East, sailed out of the base in San Diego, been there for 8 months, and it's being reported that had the longest period without porting, without going to land, and having a little respite when the sailors are able to get off the ship and walk on ground and then come back after a period of time, just a little break. That set a record in the amount of time it was on sea without docking somewhere. I can see, I guess. I mean, everybody's different. You got that many people, you're going to have some that it's going to affect in such a way that I guess it compelled them to attempt at least to jump off the ship.
From what I can tell, the number reported of intentionally going overboard at 6 is exaggerated a bit. The verified numbers are either 2 or 3, but there's no verification of 6.
Yeah, I haven't seen the number. Only the comments from interviews by the Navy Times with families.
Yeah, the number 6 has been reported all over the place, and it looks like that goes back to an unsubstantiated source on Instagram.
I found 3 families who were contacted, so that's more consistent. But the point I was making is there are 5,000 of them on the ship. So the fact that you have 3 of 5,000, you have 5,000 people assembled in one area. It's a good chance that some percentage of them are going to have some issues like this. It doesn't mean they're bad sailors, but it's just, I think that's just a statistical probability when you're dealing with human beings. More than 200 families, however, last week did meet with the Secretary of the Navy, by the way, which is an acting secretary, and to express concerns. Look, that's valid. That's legitimate. And it's something that has certainly gotten the attention of the media. If you got the Navy Times itself interviewing families, I think that tells you that there's certainly something here. It's more than nothing. But I agree with you. 3 of 5,000 is a pretty small percentage. And that, I think you're just in circumstances where if there's any kind of difficulties that a person's having, certainly mentally, when you say, Rhino, this may exacerbate those in a situation, I think that's the point here. So maybe the Navy needs to think about that as far as staying at sea for such a long period of time without going to port and giving the sailors and the Marines there a little break. But 5,000. By the way, they've said that they've endured, because they've been at sea so long, food and water shortages. How could that happen in the United States Navy, Rhino? That's crazy. Disrupted mail services. Now, that's from the Stars and Stripes, by the way. You know that media outlet covers military and operations and affairs and news. Man, I hope that's not the case. If there's anybody in this country that we need to ensure has plenty of food and water, it's members of our military. And certainly we should be getting the mail to them as well. So hopefully we're getting this situation is getting some attention and we're getting it straightened out. That is a big old Nimitz class. I'm looking at a picture of an aircraft carrier, by the way. These things are just giant. And they're just marvels of technology. Incredible. But I hear you, John. It's something to be concerned about. And you pointed out to Ricky and Aberdeen that, yeah, they actually do have nets.
Yeah, there are nets in all kind of places on pretty much any large vessel in the Navy for the purpose of catching someone that accidentally goes overboard.
Yeah, exactly. And Ricky says kind of like Top Golf. Those are big-time vertical nets, though.
I mean, no, there are nets in front of the...
Oh, yeah, in front of the hitting area.
Tee area.
Yeah, you're right, because you're upstairs. Lower and upper. Yeah, if you're on the second floor there, you're right. It's got to be open so you can hit the ball. But, yeah, you could certainly stumble and fall, especially if you're not a very good golfer and don't have good balance. Or maybe you've partaken of too much beverage at the bar. That might be a problem, too. We're taking a break right now. It's time for Fox News and SuperTalk News. On the other side, it's State Senator Bart Williams. So stay with us.
This hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 2 of Middays. We are in the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday Eve.
It's our pleasure to welcome now State Senator Bart Williams. He represents Mississippi's District 15, incorporates, make sure I still got this right here, Senator, Choctaw, Montgomery, Oktibbeha, Webster. That's what I was told.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right.
Honored to do so.
That's fantastic. Serves as the chair of the Senate Technology Committee meeting, vice chair of the Senate Energy Committee, and I got to throw this in there, serves as the co-chair of the Artificial Intelligence Task Force, of which I am honored to serve as an ex officio member. We've had a bunch of meetings and got a lot done, I think.
We have. On side point, very honored that you're there to help us. Your input's valuable. A lot of important things I think we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's been great, and I really feel like, to a great extent, Senator, we're a leader here in Mississippi in our approach and our assessment, consideration, and just our thought processes.
You know, I've been around the country the last 4 years, fortunately, advocating for our state, and I go to different legislative conferences, and the two questions that come up is the Mississippi Miracle still a big deal? A lot of people ask about that and how we did it. The next question that comes up right behind it is technology. How did y'all do this? We are a leader. It's not that,
no doubt.
I used to say, we're going to be a leader. We are a leader. With the technology, with the data centers that we've got coming, leading the governor's leadership there, with what Maine is doing, Colin Napier, set the groundwork that people use that as a model. And I think we're doing a good job. We're in the cyber. We're going to have that conversation today, a lot of things to do, but we've already done a lot of things, and we just need to, continue to refine and create more efficiencies, I think.
Yeah. You and, of course, Representative Jill Ford, my representative, right?
Yes.
North of us in Madison County. You guys are serving as co-chairs, doing a great job. And I'll point this out to just the folks that we've had a lot of meetings across the state.
Yes, sir.
7 or 8, I think, thus far, to my latest count. And then we have another one scheduled at Camp Shelby coming up in about a month in September. And this is all part of your responsibility as a member of the legislature, that work's done beyond just those 3 months when you're in official session.
Well, part-time legislature, I've not found that to be true. It is what you make of it. I'm fortunate that I'm in a moment that I can spend more time outside of the 3-month session. I'm very honored that I can, but this has been a full-time job for me, going around learning. And vice chair in energy, like you said, there's kind of a intersection there, and I've been to Washington State. I'm going to D.C. in November just to kind of get up to speed on all those things and those metrics. And we got a lot of concern about data centers, how many is too many, environmental, very valid concerns from our people, and we want to know the facts. We want to be able to answer those for them and make sure we don't overbuild. But at the same time, this is part of progression.
Yeah, 100%. We can meet our digital needs while preserving our environment and the quality of life in our community. So those two can live side by side.
They do coexist, and we've done that. We did it with automobile as we did that, and as we progress with technology. And I'm a big believer that more good comes from technological advances than bad. The way I understand it, we're created by this guy that liked to tinker. That's why he created us, and we're made like him, and we like to tinker. And we've got that's why the legislature comes in. We try to find the balance of those things, of not being extreme one way or the other, but allowing economic development to happen and trying to lift the standard of living for our citizens. And I think we're doing a good job. Room for improvement, but I think we're doing a good job.
Well, you mentioned Dr. Colin Napier, who is now the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer of the Mississippi Artificial Intelligence Network. I mean, Senator, he's on the road, it seems like, every day, and he's kind of unlocking the mysteries to those who haven't used the technology, and people are blown away. He's excellent. He's got members of his team that are, but people are getting value out of this, and the training's all no charge.
To speak to Dr. Napier for a minute, I guess it's been 3 years we've been working with him, Jill, myself, Chair Ford, and myself, and if you're old enough to remember MacGyver, he's the AI MacGyver. I mean, he's the guy that makes it all happen. Super intelligent, naturally intelligent, not artificial.
Yes.
But I just got off a call with him, and he runs. He doesn't know how to say no. He's all over. He's from D.C. He testified,
Sure did.
Before these committees, because he's out there leading through his leadership, and I'm just glad to be part of that team. It's tremendous.
So how cool is that it's Mississippi? Right? It's not like the rest of the country looks at Mississippi and thinks, oh, yeah, they're pretty good at that artificial intelligence stuff.
It used to be, you're from Mississippi, now it's, you're from Mississippi.
Exactly
that
right.
That is the truth across this nation that I see. And it's
Love
like
it.
We're leading in so many things. I've always known, our people are our secret weapon.
Sure.
And we've got it. And Dr. Napier, other people, as I go around, we got so many people who are so willing just to give it all they got to try to make us better. And that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, whenever we assemble on this task force, it's a significant brain trust in the room. There's a bunch of smart people that are all gathered around.
We've got the biggest
there.
companies represented there. I mean, we've
Exactly.
got some of the greatest minds in our state, I think, that are represented, say present company here. But a lot of things, you can sit there and you put smart people in the room and you can discern so many things. And I think getting eyeball to eyeball, I love technology, but eyeball to eyeball, you cannot beat that.
No doubt. No substitute for it.
That's right. That's right.
And we've done a good job. And I applaud you guys for having the forethought of scheduling these meetings around the state. We've been to Mississippi State. We've been to Mississippi Gulf Coast. It's just good.
I'm a visual person. I can stay in the classroom so long, and I'm going to retain so much. Now I got to go touch and feel, look and see. And we've got so many cyber resources around this state that are there. And hopefully we'll continue to do that and let the members see that. It just gives us another level of depth.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree. And then going to Camp Shelby. As well. So coming up this September. Now, you alluded to it, the Lieutenant Governor just commissioned this cybersecurity task group committee. I don't know exactly what he's calling it, select committee, task force, whatever it is. But and some senators, of course, are included on that. And the goal there is really to sort of assess the current cybersecurity environment in government and just what the risks are to government, our state overall, and what we need to be thinking about to make sure we're in good shape and protected there.
Absolutely it is. I think it's a great move for the Lieutenant Governor to do that. A few years ago in the 24th session, I think we did the CSRB, the Cybersecurity Review Board.
Yeah.
And to allude back to putting people in the room, we've got several different agencies represented. They get together once a month to talk about cyber assessments, about grants that we've been able to implement that they have been, and pushing things down really more to the locals than state. We have our ITS department that takes care of our agencies, so that layer is there.
Yeah.
With locals, a good success story there, kind of laying the foundation for the Select Committee on Cybersecurity is the technical name. But when we started that CSRB board a couple of years ago, the input from MDE, Mississippi Department of Education, they've got a seat at the table there. They had about 20% of the school districts were bought into some standards that Homeland Security had some grant money they were able to implement, and basically look at a network and say, hey, this is where you're deficient, this is what you need to do, this is what your minimum standards need to be. Just an assessment from CISA, a base level assessment, if you will. Currently, we've got almost a 90% buy-in. So education and awareness, to kind of segue into this committee meeting, I think that's one of the chief things we need to look at. It's easy for people to see that I need the police department to protect me from the robbers. Cyber is such a virtual and nebulous thing. Sometimes people don't see that. You and I are in the space, so we get it. You and I have probably been witness to cyber attacks or victim of cyber attacks, so we get it and we understand the urgency. Communicating that to our people, especially our vulnerable population, our seniors, our young people, our people that just maybe aren't savvy enough to understand that, hey, I'm going to give them $20 and get this back. With the rise of AI, of which I'm a big proponent, obviously, the bad guys will use that too.
No doubt about it.
So we've got to be out in front. Thus, the Lieutenant Governor's creation of this committee, we've done a lot of things in the state, but I think what the purpose of this committee is predominantly is let's take a look at what we're doing. We've got different assets out there, bring them in a better alignment, or we can be better efficient with that. What we'll do is we'll take a look at what are other states doing. I like to see, I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I like to make it better, but I don't like to reinvent it if someone's doing a good job out there. So we're going to look at what's out there. We're going to solicit input from the private sector, for some companies that are out there. As we are in the season of AI data centers, obviously their cyber protection is going to be top notch. We want to look at those metrics. What can we implement in the state? And people are asking me, what are we going to do? I don't want to answer the questions before we ask them. So I don't know the answer to that. That's what we, in October 13th, is our hearing, and we'll have a lot of speakers to talk about that, and hopefully on the other side of that, be able to formulate some framework. As you said, we've got several senators. It's a great group of people the lieutenant governor's put together. Senator Tyler McConn's my co-chair.
Yep.
I'm kind of the tech guy that's going to go out there and do that part. He's the lawyer guy and the government structure guy. And together, we hopefully will put all that together and come up with a good recommendation what we need to look at legislatively during session.
Well, as you know, before we go to break, you can hang with us and keep
Yes,
talking?
sir. I'm here.
So, as you know, before we go to break, this is not something you can just address and then check the box and say, I'm done. The bad guys aren't doing that.
We can change our oil and not worry about it for 3,000 to 6,000 miles. This is a constant series of assessment we've got to do all the time, and we've got to do that. And hopefully we can find a way to do that where it's a passive thing.
Senator Bart Williams is our guest in the Element Wealth studio. We're going to talk some more after the break. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
When I wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without warning, love, bears heavy on my mind. Then I look at you, and the world's
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're visiting with Senator Bart Williams. He is in the Element Wealth studio, represents District 15, incorporates Choctaw, Montgomery, Oktibbeha, Webster County, serves as the chair of the Senate Technology Cmte, vice chair, Senate Energy Committee, and was just recently appointed by Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann to co-chair, along with his Senate colleague, Senator Tyler McConn, a new select committee on cybersecurity. That just occurred last week. So we were talking on the break, and right before we went to break, this is something you can't ever stop evaluating, analyzing, assessing, planning, mitigating, all the above. Because the bad guys don't sleep. They're constantly on the attack. And they're looking for vulnerabilities, and when they find those, they're going to seize them, leverage them, and do harm. We just witnessed a major breach at our largest healthcare institution, University of Mississippi Medical Center, just a couple of miles from where we are, that took the place down for several days. And it was a ransomware attack, of course, and then we're finally ever able to recover and resume normal operations. And they're pretty good at UMC. I mean, it's not like they don't have qualified people and very powerful modern systems to protect their IT assets. But still, they were a victim.
They have a very robust cybersecurity. I don't want anyone to, in my opinion, what I know about it, which is not much more than most people, I mean, they had a very robust system. They acted very quickly. Everything happened, and the pain was very intense.
Yeah.
I'm a guy that likes to relate to virtual things. It's like they had the alarm on the store. They had everything like it should be, but somebody still broke in the window and still grabbed a few guns and got away. They were able to shut down and do things and react that way. But, yeah, it's a constant you can never let your guard down.
Yeah.
With AI bots and those things, as we say, they're positives, but they're also negatives. People are constantly trying to find those weaknesses from, phishing for emails like we discussed earlier to finding vulnerabilities and firewalls all the way around.
Well, and you talked about the Mississippi Department of Information Technology Services, which of course is headed by our colleague on the AI Task Force, Dr. Craig Ogeron. He is quite capable and an excellent person for that role. Has been in that role a while. Does a great job, and so does that team there.
I was going to say he and his team are phenomenal. I think there again, when they go around to these conferences where they're government people, they come to him.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? They're the leaders again in the nation. Many things. Their webpage has won the national award many years in a row. It's just amazing the things that we lead in this state. Yeah,
totally agree.
It's an honor to work with those guys as well. They're rock stars.
Right here in Mississippi. So let's talk about energy. We have been blessed here in the state of Mississippi to be selected for a significant amount of investment by lots of big companies who have seen fit to make investments here and undertake big-time projects across our state. But, Senator, I've had discussions with economic developers. To a great extent, energy is maybe the new currency in economic development. It's you got to have an all the above. Obviously, you got to have workforce, you got to have transportation, infrastructure, you got to have favorable business, regulatory, and tax environment. I think we check all those boxes, but now we're seeing a build-out and expansion of our energy footprint. I think we're serviced by some really good energy companies, plus the great electric co-ops across our state.
I think there's no question about that. I've had the opportunity. I was in last month, spent 4 or 5 days out in Northwest, in Washington, Southeast Washington State at a 4-day, it wasn't pleasure, it was 13 hours a day in classroom to learn about energy from generation all the way to distribution with it. I'll spend, as I said, 4 days in Washington, D.C., in a couple of months to do the policy side of it. Mississippi is in such a great place on so many metrics. We have capacity. We have affordable energy. Some of the things, we've got that concern we mentioned earlier with people thinking that the AI data centers will tax our grid, and too much of a good thing obviously can be bad. We're nowhere near that in my estimation of what I've seen. We've got great grid capacity. Entergy is able to put $300 million in infrastructure because of the revenue that's guaranteed off the data centers that are coming. This is not a have to. This was just stabilizing to continue to have the grid confidence that's there because they have the extra money to do it.
Yeah,
and they're doing it. All the TVA does basically the top third, Entergy the middle, and Mississippi Power the bottom third of the company. We have capacity.
The state.
We have generators that are coming online as we go forward, and we look at the need for it. So we are in a tremendous place, I think. And the research in SMRs, the small modular reactors, that's coming. It can't come quick enough. Once that proof of concept is there, I think it's going to be tremendous. It changes things, and you're going to see as we continue to add data centers behind the meter where people have on-site generation.
Lots of projects for that very situation, that very design on the books right now, planned right now, especially in Texas. I mean, the number of nuclear power plants that are being discussed for construction to service data centers there behind the meter. You know what's going to happen? They're going to end up producing more than they consume, and they're going to sell that back into the grid.
I think that you could really see that problem in a decade is that, okay, we've got too much capacity. How do we deal with this and how do we work with it? Because, we're a monitored state. In other words, the inputs and outputs are pretty much dictated, if you will. It's been a very profitable thing for the companies, which is a good thing. There's conversations about that. But, 150 years ago, anybody could create electricity, and we had people getting electrocuted. So you had to have some degree of control over that. If government doesn't need to be there, I don't want them there. But this is one of those instances. And I think there's been a great job done there. There is some fragmentation throughout the grid. The vulnerabilities from cyber obviously is always there. We've got to be diligent and be in front of that. But short story is, as I'm going around and trying to learn, I think we're in a great place with the energy as currency. We will be attractive to not just data centers, but industry throughout the nation. Obviously, we put the aluminum mill up in North Mississippi. We've had other industrial sites come in because we're very inducive of that being a good thing for them and a good thing for our people.
Yeah. And, of course, all those guys are making significant investments to create and build out new generation and transmission capacity as well.
Absolutely.
And there's concerns. You've heard this, that, you guys in the legislature, you cut this deal and allowed the energy company, the utility company, to negotiate a contract for electricity rates and delivery directly with the consumer, the data center consumer, without PSC oversight. And I think you would agree that, if we'd have required PSC oversight, we'd probably still be trying to negotiate a deal and get something done.
There's no question about that. That's got to be done. And at some point, we've got to have confidence in the people that are making those deals, that they're doing it on behalf of the citizens. That's who I represent. That's who they represent.
Yeah.
And they're doing that. Before some of these project bills, we've had an opportunity to, I'm going to use the word interrogate, MDA and economic developers locally. The aluminum mill, I spent a lot of time asking a lot of questions. So I had a level of confidence before I cast a vote on behalf of the people. And I believe that. One of the things I learned is since 2019, we've had a 33% increase in electricity across this country. That's not because of data centers. As everybody knows, wages have gone up. Everything roots from that. The guy that's at the power station, the guy that's on the pole, these guys are making 30 or 40 or 50% more money than they were. That's just what inflation's back. We went through a 20-year hiatus, 15-year hiatus of 1% and 2%, and it's easy to get there. You and I can remember my first mortgage rate was 8.5%.
Yeah.
They want to know, how did I get that?
Yep.
So we're back in that moment in time where you've got an inflationary period, and that may be a little bit more than normal, but those metrics were not created by the data centers. There are specific areas that have overbuilt. We're not one of those.
It's the fixed cost, as you know, that are driving
Absolutely.
electricity. It's the cost of transformers, by some accounts, are 4-6x than where they were in 2020.
And lead times are so long. All these things
Wire
play
is
to it.
way more expensive
absolutely.
as well.
I'm in that space.
Copper,
It's up.
yeah,
absolutely.
And all that are the major costs associated
Yes.
with delivering electricity.
Yes.
The fuel costs are actually moderate to down relative to inflation.
That's right. That's right.
That's the variable component, but the major cost input, of course, is the big CapEx. And then the maintenance of all that, as you indicated, the folks doing all that stuff, their wages are up considerably.
Well, and we got to commend the people on the grid. You're a 99.9999 reliability, and to retain that, you've got to put money in infrastructure. And I've grown up knowing I had electricity, knowing I had running water, and when that thing becomes 3 nines, it becomes a crisis.
Yeah, that's right.
But we've got to invest the money to do that. If we bump up against capacity, if that were really happening, we would have a concern, but we're not. But we've got aging infrastructure there, like we do in so many places. To segue to water, I've been heavily involved in that. You've got to maintain your infrastructure, and it costs money.
Totally. Well, I feel good that we have good corporate companies,
strong leadership,
strong with good leadership. They want to do right by the communities.
Yeah, Tennessee Valley. That's a godsend to have that for a third of our state to be provided by them and the cooperatives. I'm such a big fan of them in distribution. What they can do with electricity, what they've done with fiber. They've just done a knock-up job at doing that.
I agree. All good corporate citizens. Appreciate it, Senator. Thanks for coming in.
Honored to be here. Thank you,
Senator Bart Williams has been our guest. We're taking a break. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Some luck in my direction. I caught it in my hands today. I finally made a tricky French connection. You winked and gave me your okay. I'll take you on a trip beside the ocean and drop the top of Chesapeake Bay. Ain't nothing like this.
That was the biggest hit the band Starbuck had, Rhino. That's Bruce Blackman. He from Atlanta, Georgia. That tune pretty high on the charts, 1976. Moonlight Feels Right. Oh, boy. Appreciate that. Appreciate Senator Bart Williams. You guys in his District 15 are certainly... You are blessed to have him representing you. He's just a good guy. He knows his stuff, and he cares deeply about the state, certainly his district. And I appreciate him coming in and talking to us today. And I enjoy working with him, as I do my Representative Jill Ford, and all the members of the AI Task Force. We just got a good group of smart people. And honestly, guys, not just because of me, but I'd put that group and its brain power and its capability, its thoughtfulness up against any similar organization in the country. We're blessed to have that here in the state of Mississippi. So, on the C Spire text line, I wish Monroe County, Mississippi had more wattage. Aberdeen. I don't know what they meant to say there, Rhino. Are you reading that? That's from Joey the Trucker. Aberdeen significant? What are the challenges you're having, Joey? Just curious. Are you needing power for some purpose that you're unable to obtain? And is that power? Are you in an area where you are serviced by an electric co-op? Or I know some cities also, right, Rhino, in the state of Mississippi operate their own electric organizations, electricity producing utilities. So let us know on that. Interesting. Ricky in Aberdeen says, we're talking about how the USS Lincoln is, it's being reported at least, it's deployed at sea, has been for 8 months, that there are water and food shortages and big time delays in the mail. Ricky says, nobody's getting good service from the U.S. mail anymore. Jake in the Delta says, I was on a cruise ship with that many people for 7 days and thought I was going to jump over a few times. Yeah, 5,000. Can't even give our troops a break, yet they are asking for $1.5 trillion, desperate and delusional. Yeah, referring to the president's recommended budget for the United States Department of War. It sits right at about $900 billion. It's been steadily increasing, of course, like virtually all spending in the federal government. And the president has requested that the Congress increase the Department of War's budget by $500 billion a year. What came out of the House that did not include that sort of increase. And then, of course, you know, the Senate, they passed a spending resolution as well to keep the government funded through the end of September, which is the end of the fiscal year. And it had, I think, Rhino, a $91 billion increase, as I recall, in Department of War spending. So they did not really accommodate the president's request to increase it by $500 billion. At this point, that is awaiting approval in the House. The House is out. The Senate is too, but the Senate stayed longer than the House. I believe the House got out of town in accordance with the normal schedule, taking off the entire month of August. They will be returning, and they'll have to take that legislation up. And to keep the government funded, opened, if you will, here we go again. So, man,
and the Senate's not technically in recess because they're still holding pro forma sessions to prevent President Trump from having any recess appointments.
That's right.
As they've done the entire time under Thune.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you for pointing that out. A good point. And so technically they're not, but they're not really conducting legislative business at this point, are they?
No, it's a bunch of staffers that we are now beholden to.
Oh, my gosh.
Nobody elected the senatorial staffers, but they're up there holding pro forma sessions so that the people you actually elected can go schmooze.
Oh, my gosh. Well, they got elections. They got to go camp. But what do we have, 33 being contested Senate seats, I believe, across the country. Of course, all House seats up for re-election. It's comes up every 2 years. And, that right now I think the prediction markets and the talking heads and the pundits, they're pretty much already marking down the Democrats flipping the House and taking it over. But there is something that is worth considering as part of that dynamic, and that is there are 23 House seats that are currently held by a Democrat that went for President Trump in 24. So what it means is that those are purple districts is what it means, and it could go either way. They're not sure things. They're not reliable. There are only 9 on the other side of that coin. There are only 9 held by Republicans right now that went for Kamala Harris. So Republicans have 9 districts that you would have to put in the basket of, yeah, this thing could turn. But the Democrats have 23 that they're essentially defending. So the fact that the district went for President Trump at the top of the ticket but voted for a Democrat to represent them in the House means it's not like it's no chance that it's out of the question. And that's just part of the dynamic of House districts. That's a little different, of course, than when you're dealing with statewide elections, such as for the United States Senate. And there you got a couple of districts, or a couple of states, that I think have, at least right now, based on polls, a strong chance of flipping, and that would be Iowa and North Carolina, going from Democrat to Republican. Those are the main ones, I would say. There are some who believe that Susan Collins is vulnerable in Maine. Of course, you know all the controversy surrounding the Democrat candidate, Graham Plattner, with all his baggage. Now they got a new one that is going to take on Senator Collins in the upcoming...
You mean the one that had kids with his cousin?
Exactly. Now that's surfaced. What is up with these people? Are there not just plain old normal people out there that run for U.S. Senate? We got to have wackos.
I mean, they're Democrats.
It's incredible. You
pretty much have to be a whack job to be a Democrat nowadays.
Well, they certainly meet that definition. And then, of course, in Texas, that's a high-profile race. We've talked about that one many times. Attorney General, Republican candidate Ken Paxton facing James Tallarico, the nutcase Democrat. And that race...
Exhibit B, whack job Democrat.
Well, that is a whack job for sure. The polls show that thing too close to call. But, the polls also showed that on this past Tuesday, the governor's race in Wisconsin heavily favored, like 20% lead in the polls. Another whack job supreme, Francesca Hong, but she ended up going down. So much for those polls.
It's pretty much become consensus at this point in that race that she lost in the last week, and there weren't any polls done in the last week.
Yeah, I think that's right. So much was exposed. And by the way, you said something about this, and I can't remember now if you said it on the air. I think you did, about the complaining about some missing USB drives, and I've seen lots of stories on that in the media now.
Yeah, they had something like 8 precincts, and 5 of the 8 showed up without any votes on the USB drive. It just had the audit log.
Unbelievable.
So they had to go back and load the votes on the USB drive and take it back to be counted.
Oh, my gosh. So, yeah, interesting stuff going on across the country. Again, I'm going to point out the massive amount of dollars flowing into these races, in particular in Texas and North Carolina, where you should not be surprised if the total tab, both parties, on those Senate races exceeds $1 billion for a Senate seat. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, yeah, the Senate bill, by the way, that passed before they... what did you say? They're like in a shadow session? What did you call it? What's it called?
Pro forma sessions.
Pro forma session. In other words, fake. Okay. I got to tell you, I've never heard it referred to as pro forma. I've used the word pro forma countless times, uncountable times in my business career, because that generally refers to a financial projection, typically is the way that term is used. We would sort of use it casually, pro formas, referring to pro forma budget or financial analysis, speculative in nature. So it's in other words, it's not real. It's just kind of
they last for literally a couple minutes. It's all just designed to
placeholder. Sort of.
It goes back to, I forget where it is, but there's a rule that neither chamber can take a break for more than 3 days without the other's consent.
Okay.
So instead of relying on the other chamber's consent, they do this, and it's stupid. Because all it does is ensure that there is no recess, which would allow President Trump to fill the plethora of empty seats with recess appointments, because Thune, in his infinite wisdom, can't get jack diddly or squat done in the Senate.
Yeah. I got you. And that's exactly right. And they did pass this spending bill, and the budget for defense, Department of War, $1.15 trillion. So that was an increase. I think, as I recall, Rhino, the 2025 or fiscal year 2026 spending bill, because that's the fiscal year we're in right now, was right at $900 billion in that neighborhood. So this is like a $100 billion, a little over $100 billion increase in spending. That, of course, did fall short of actually for 2025 it was $850 billion. I think it was about 919 for 2026. That's the year we're presently in. And so this is an increase of roughly $100 billion next year. So something to keep in mind, just to point out, I know a lot of people believe that if we just eliminated the waste, fraud, and abuse, improper spending, which comes in many forms, improper spending, you could have spending, of course, that is completely legal, authorized, appropriated in statute, depending on if it's mandatory or discretionary. That don't mean it's proper. A lot of that is improper. So consider it to be unnecessary, wasteful, frivolous. But when you're increasing the Department of Defense's budget here by $100 billion because the vice president last week, who is working, and I applaud this, have created this effort, established this effort to root out fraud at a minimum and improper spending at the federal level. He estimated $250-300 billion, which is great. Definitely need to do that. But when we're increasing spending legitimately, I mean, this isn't fraud. This is the Congress saying, we're going to increase spending at the Department of Defense by $100 billion. Well, you're already cutting into those savings. You're there. So not really achieving anything. You're cutting it on this side and increasing it on that side. There's no benefit. We got to do more than just that, is the point. We got to take a hard look at trimming legitimate spending, in addition to rooting out all the improper spending. But we're going in the wrong direction, poised at this point to cross the $40 trillion of debt mark sometime this month. And we're running out of days in the month. You can actually go bet on that in the prediction markets. You can bet on the day. This is crazy. And there's different percentages, of course, associated with the day that you select. You can literally bet on the day you believe, you predict that our debt will eclipse $40 trillion. Man, unbelievable. Didn't think we'd ever say $40 trillion of debt. Coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News. Stay with us.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
Well, good news on the markets. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, positive for the week. They like this news, Rhino, on the CPI and the PPI. So, but here's the question. Are people feeling this? Because what I mean here is the inflation news is actually good. It's even the headline number at 3.4% isn't, I would say, just super high and problematic. It's higher, certainly, than the so-called natural rate of inflation. Economists have pegged that at 2% as long as they've been doing that. I remember learning that in macroeconomics class back in the 70s. So I know that concept has been widely accepted for a long time. But then fairly moderate, fairly minimal month over month, which is good news at 0.1%, meaning it's fairly level. And then the PPI, that's the producer price index. That's the cost of inputs to the production process. Think of it as raw materials that a manufacturer would buy. So these are purchasing folks that are involved in this survey that are relaying to the government what they're seeing with respect to the cost of stuff they're buying. Like a purchasing manager, just to put it really simply. Now, you know that supply chain is extremely complex, but just in general. So that's all good. It means that inflation is fairly stable. I think the Fed's looking for further decreases in the rate of inflation before they act and reduce interest rates. And that is a problem because home sales were down last month rather sharply, and that's being attributed to a fairly high rate of mortgage interests. Last I checked, 6.78%. And that is pricing many people out of the home buying market. And that's causing problems. And it's also one of the things, as you know, Rhino, that is being expressed as a concern going into the midterms. I think that's, when you think about affordability, that may actually top the list. That and, of course, the cost of health insurance. But folks are saying, I can't buy a house, and thus I'm not able to participate in, experience the good old American dream, which is largely thought to be getting to a point in your working life of being able to own a home, own property. It's not everybody's idea of it, but in general, that's a key component of the American dream, I would say. I mean, if you were to believe in the way Norman Rockwell portrayed and depicted Americana, of course, it would be the sort of the standard ranch style house with a white picket fence, right? Vehicle in the driveway. 2.5 kids, I think, or something.
Yeah, you gotta have the 2.5 kids.
2.5 kids. So I think that was kind of created as a vision to represent the American dream, and it is unique. You won't see that anywhere else in the world. But when folks aren't able to purchase, when they aren't able to purchase houses and just jump into the housing market, they kind of sour. And I do think to a great extent that's driving many of our young people to look more favorably on socialism, thinking, oh, yeah, the government can fix that. No, it's the government. How do you get this point across, Rhino? No, it's the government that put us in this position. That's why you can't participate in the American dream. Let's start with Joe Biden's, I'm just going to call it what it is. It was the Democrats. It wasn't just him. He was being led around like a dang dog. But it was their selfishness, their disdain for Donald Trump. I know I brought this up many times, but it's important because it shows the connection between bad public policy and your dang pocketbook. And the best thing they could do is get the hell out of the way. And he couldn't do that. He couldn't stand, he and the Democrats, oh, we can't let that happen. Well, then they'll think it was because of Donald Trump, not us. And we gotta get credit for this. And then is totally incompetent. I didn't say the word I wanted to use because we can't do that on the air. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, is she maybe the most incompetent in the history of the country? It's transitory. Remember that crap? They were all wrong. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, transitory, don't worry, all wrong. We are paying the price for that today. So while I'm delivering relatively good news over the last year on the inflation front, the fact is I think most people are saying, yeah, but the 4 years prior to that was killer. I'm still not up to speed with that. Still hadn't recovered from that. Still hadn't closed that gap. I just want to point out that I still, in my heart, will always believe if he hadn't passed that stupid American Rescue Plan, again, completely politically motivated. There was no sound economic, fiscal, financial, monetary reason to throw that $2 trillion into the economy. None. Zero. Just pandering. Yeah, and short term, everybody thought that was great. There was all kinds of little goodies in it without considering the long-term consequences. Well, that's what we're dealing with now. So, again, the best thing government can do is get the heck out of the dang way. The president's proposal, as I was talking about earlier in the program with Leah Long, National Federation of Independent Small Business Director for Mississippi and Louisiana, I like this. The president's proposal we talked about it a bit yesterday, index capital gains to inflation. And by the way, the state of Mississippi needs to do that as well. Now, the state of Mississippi should enact legislation that would index capital gains. Now, you understand at the state level that all income is taxed at the same, all types of income are taxed, classes of income are taxed at the same rate, in the same method. At the federal level, capital gains are taxed differently. There's a different schedule, and there's a different formula for that than what's called ordinary income. That would be like your wages, or if you own a business, the pass-through income. But capital gains are taxed differently if they're held more than a year, by the way, what are called long-term capital gains. So the state of Mississippi should adjust, I believe, even while we still have this income tax, I think they should adjust our income tax law right now to index capital gains. I personally believe it could produce potentially more income. Certainly, I don't think we'd lose income, and we should use that in attracting business or stimulating business startup or attracting new residents into our state. It's not the same as having no income tax, but it still, I think, represents significant, meaningful tax relief. I'd love to see that. The state of Mississippi also, Rhino, should enact law that aligns state taxation of tips and overtime with federal law. There's a reconciling item on that now. That's something that's in place federally. Let's get that done at the state level as well. And I know that a lot of folks, including me, would like to see some relief on the property tax front. Man, that'd be great. All for it. Nobody likes paying them dang property taxes. I don't like it. Nobody likes paying car tags. You looked it up for us the other day. Fourth in the nation now, I think, is where we stand with respect to the cost of our car tags. But again, it's fair to point out the other states that have lower priced car tax have higher taxes elsewhere. Mainly sales taxes is where you'll see taxes higher. I'm all for that. I know Commissioner Andy Gibson is a gubernatorial candidate, has proposed cutting those car tags in half, and he's proposed, by the way, to cover that revenue loss that the counties, school districts, and cities would incur from the reduction of car tags at the state level. So the state would essentially increase the legislative tag credit. That's what he's proposed, which means more money going out to counties, municipalities, and school districts to offset the loss of half of the tag revenue. That would cost about $350 million of more state general fund spending coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Patriotism is a law.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The blues has got a hold of me. I believe I'm getting dizzy. Help me now. I keep thinking about the night in Memphis. Lord, I thought I was in heaven.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Stay looking at the C Spire text line. We were just talking about this idea of reducing car tax and property taxes as well. So I don't think, Rhino, as best I could tell, the commissioner's proposals would involve just passing a law that would reduce price of car tags and property taxes with the expectation that the entities who receive those revenues, that would be school districts, account for about half of the revenue that is received and then distributed to the district from ad valorem taxes on both vehicles and on real property. And then the county, and then if you live in a city, the city participates in that as well. But in that order, it's about half to the school district, a little more than a third, generally speaking, to the county, and then the remaining to the municipality. So I don't think the contemplation here is that those entities would just receive less money. I think the plan is the state would cover those revenue reductions, those tax reductions, with money appropriated from the general fund. I have the data in front of me. I can tell you that with respect to the car tags, if we were to cut half the revenue currently received from ad valorem taxes on vehicles in the state of Mississippi, across the entire state, half of that's $340 million a year, which means that the state would have to come up with that amount of money to make the school districts, cities, and counties whole. Certainly, you could do that and reduce spending elsewhere. I've seen perhaps the idea of, well, we could just eliminate the special projects bill that always gets crammed into the appropriations right at the end of the session. And that's just money that is funneled out mainly to cities for various needs. I mean, it's everything from water infrastructure to parks to bike trails. I mean, you can go down the list there, Rhino. You've seen that before. And some of that's just flat out silly. So-called pet projects, community improvements. Certainly, that could be eliminated. Some of that could be. But then the counties, cities, mainly the cities, would probably look at ways to increase taxes to pay for those kinds of things that they need, as opposed to relying on the state to send it down. So my personal opinion is any proposals for revenue reforms, tax reforms, should always be supported by 5 to 10 years of, ready for it, Rhino, pro formas. That's what they call them. That's what it's called. In other words, you just need to recast and project the budget for a period of time, because this is permanent. Unlike the pet projects, which are appropriated each year, just on a discretionary basis, if you run into a situation in the legislature, for example, where, after doing the budget and appropriating all the money for normal state operations to the agencies, we don't have any revenue left over to funnel out to the cities. Was it 2 years ago, Rhino, when they had to have a special election, special session to pass a budget, right? And remember that one of the complaints was, well, we're not going to get the special projects bill here. We're just going to do normal budgeting. And the only reason we're even able to do this is because of the massive amount of money the federal government showered on all the states, not just Mississippi, from the COVID era. And that still is matriculating throughout our balance sheet, shall we say, at the state level. Of course, the price we paid for that was inflation. That's the price we paid for it. It's the stupid American Rescue Plan. And even prior to that, in the president's final year in 2020, his inner circle said, man, we got to put all this money out there because we're going to have to shut the economy down because of COVID. And we spent over $3 trillion. $3 trillion in 1 year under the guise of COVID relief. And a lot of that was defrauded. The stories, are they not, Rhino, about the Paycheck Protection Program? They're like legendary, the fraud. And people who enriched themselves. Insane. Because it was just a stupid paperwork exercise with the not my problem people. And it cost us $3 trillion. All that nonsense did.
Oh, I'm certain Give Me a Hellcat LLC is legitimate business.
That's right. I mean, you've seen interviews with people standing in front of their Lamborghinis with the Paycheck Protection Program. And there were numerous other programs.
Yeah, you had the dude that bought the $100,000 Pokemon card with PPP money.
That's right. And now we have this employee retention credit. I mean, you see ads on that. What a dang scam that is. Oh, yeah, I kept my employees. Oh, great, here's some money. That's literally what it is. That's why we got $40 trillion in debt. Oh, man. So that stuff ought to be terminated immediately. It's still going on. I mean, there are mills that sprung up. They're just in the business of helping you do the paperwork to shake down the federal government. And what's really sad and kind of disturbing, maddening, a range of emotions all in one, is that we're literally borrowing money. Think about this. To send to fraudsters. We're borrowing money to send to fraudsters. I just can't wrap my head around that. I know it's often said, well, yeah, that's taxpayer money. And it is, I agree. But keep in mind that the way our budget works now, half of all that, we go borrow. How stupid is that? Borrow money to give away. Think about running your household that way. Well, I can't pay the rent. I can't buy food, but I'm going to go borrow some money to go give away to my favorite pet project. That's what that equates to.
And then add the extra layer of you've only got one income in the household because half the people aren't paying in on federal income tax.
So true. That's exactly right. Half of the households in this country pay no federal income taxes. So anytime the Democrats talk about, the tax breaks for the rich, well, you can only give tax reductions to people who actually pay taxes. You can't reduce to zero. But on the other side of that, we have all these stupid welfare credit programs where we're actually sending money to people. Not only do they not pay any taxes, the IRS is sending them checks.
And the federal government makes their lives more comfortable than the people actually footing the bill.
Oh, so true. Mark Formby says, when the Dems were in control, we called that pork barrel, and we were going to end it. When we took over the legislature, we just changed the name to special projects. Yeah, Mark, and some call it the Christmas tree, right? Isn't that what they call it? Oh, man. Paul and Hernando says, if we keep cutting taxes, where are we going to get the money to run the state? Money was not matriculating. I think the theory is, I can tell you what the theory is, Paul, and it's just a theory, is that if we cut income taxes, which I completely support, I made that very clear. I hate income taxes. I want to get rid of them. That would produce more sales taxes because that is the number one source of revenue to the general fund in Mississippi. Is about 38% of our total general fund revenues comes from sales taxes. So the theory is if we cut income taxes, that's going to be offset by sales taxes. However, economists for decades have measured, this is a key metric, the relationship between income taxes and GDP. And at the federal level, it turns out that Art Laffer was right. Not that I ever doubted him, but there are some lunatic Democrats that doubt him. Art Laffer, of course, famous economist. He's in his 80s now. Seems like he's 50. Worked in the Reagan administration, but he conceived of this theory, you could call it, called the Laffer curve. Basically says there's kind of an optimum point of tax rates and revenue, and if you raise it too much, you get less revenue. If you lower it too much, you don't get enough revenue. There's an optimum point where you've got a tax rate that serves the economy the best and is also the most effective for taxpayers. Well, it turns out I did the research on this. It's been 17% of GDP for years, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook Paint.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, before we went to break, I just want to continue to explain that concept because I think you may find it helpful that economists for years have measured again the relationship between income taxes and GDP as a percentage of GDP. And it turns out it's just amazing. If you go back 50 years, you'll find that the personal income tax as a percentage, actually personal plus corporate, now that I think about it, as a percentage of GDP has just been steady at roughly 17%. 50 years. So in other words, it doesn't matter if it's the Reagan tax structure, the Clinton tax structure, the Bush, the Obama, the Trump, the Biden, 17%. Now, that's not a measurement of revenue from taxes. It's a measurement of the revenue relative to GDP. So the point that Art Laffer, his concept, the reason he developed it was to try to show how tax rates connect not only to the money the government collects, but to the economy. So here's what the curve shows, as you know, Rhino. A tax rate of 0% and a tax rate, I know the Democrats don't believe this, of 100% produce zero money. Think about that for a minute. Little second order thinking. A tax rate of 100% would produce zero revenue because there wouldn't be any freaking economy. I know they don't get that, do they? By the way, the Cato Institute did some math for us. They calculated the cost of all the Democrat socialism proposals. You see this? $200 trillion. There ain't enough money to pay for that. It really does prove that Maggie Thatcher was right with respect to her famous quip, under socialism, sooner or later, you run out of other people's money. Absolutely correct on this. So what Dr. Laffer, his objective was, let's find the optimum tax rate. How do we get enough money to run the government, but it not be so oppressive so as to damage or hinder or impede the economy? Thus the curve. So in the state of Mississippi, just turn our attention to that, if you look at the relationship between sales taxes and sales tax revenue received by the state after the diversion down to the municipality, and our GDP, turns out that that calculates out to about 1.8%. So to eliminate, to your question a minute ago, Mose, or who I can't remember, somebody else maybe said something about it, how we're going to get this money. Maybe it's Paul and Hernando. Yeah, I think it was. Thank you, Paul. So what that means is that if we're going to rely on sales taxes as a replacement to income taxes, I think that the relationship between our current sales taxes and our GDP is instructive, and you could infer from that to what extent we'd have to increase our GDP to make up for the losses of income tax revenue. It turns out we would need to add about $110 billion of GDP to produce enough sales taxes to cover the complete loss of income taxes. The state's current GDP is $165 billion. You're talking about a more than 66%, 2/3 increase in our GDP. That would be great. Seems like it would be difficult, but that's why this thing's being phased in over a period of time. Certainly it makes it a lot more difficult to generate the necessary amount of revenue when you are increasing spending. So if we increase the legislative tag credit by $350 million, that's increasing spending. If we're going to throw money into the PERS fund to shore it up, stabilize it, that increases spending. And then you got other normal state expenses, education. We're not done with teacher pay raises. I know the state employees, they're all clamoring for a raise as well, understandably so. And then you've got Medicaid. I'm telling you, that's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. It's a huge problem nationwide, just not here in the state of Mississippi. It's a huge problem, and that ain't going away. And Mississippi is the most reliant on federal dollars of all the states for its Medicaid program. And rest assured, when the budget process starts in the 2027 legislative session, Medicaid is going to request a huge increase, just as they did this past year. And we could possibly get to a point where if we don't meet our state obligation, we lose the federal money. I'm not even sure what the federal law says. Can a state just opt out of the Medicaid program altogether? I'm not talking about Medicaid expansion. I'm talking about the Medicaid program created in 1965 that every state is a participant in, including Mississippi. So these are going to be on the table. No doubt about it as we come into the 2027 session. Thomas says Medicaid is not a part of the proper role of government. Sure, you could argue that Medicare's not, that SNAP isn't, that farm subsidies aren't, that Social Security's not. Sure, we could argue that all day long. It doesn't matter. There's no chance that the federal government is going to shut down the Medicaid program. No chance. If that were to happen, if the state of Mississippi were to try to operate it on its own, we'd have to come up with $7 billion. $7 billion. That is just slightly less than the entire amount of revenue that flows into our general fund. In other words, double your taxes. Okay, so how does that, this is on the C Spire tax line, how does that increase GDP, gross domestic product, increase revenue? Sorry for being so ignorant on the issue. Does that mean more sales and therefore sales taxes? Well, just in general, it's a great question. Just in general, economic growth, scaling of the economy and economic activity produces more revenue for government, assuming that tax rates and the tax structure stays relatively level. You're growing your economy, that means you're spending more money, you're generating more sales tax revenue. Simple as that. You're generating more property tax revenue because you're scaling the economy. That means there's more accessible property to pay property taxes without touching the millage, without increasing the rates. So yeah, economic growth, it as you know, Rhino, it refutes the Democrats' constant refrain. Well, the reason we're producing deficits is because of the Trump tax cuts, which gave away, giveaways to the rich. And the reality is, no, after the Trump tax cuts of 2017, revenues increased. Unfortunately, so did spending. Revenues went up 33% in 4 years after that because the economy took off. Turns out when people get to keep more of their money, they tend to produce more. I know that's a foreign concept to the Democrats. No, what the Democrats couldn't accept was, but you increase spending freaking 50% while we increase revenue 30%. If you'd kept it the same, we'd be in a surplus situation. But then you can't go back home and brag about all that money you sent home, right? All them programs you created. It's not, as Ronald Reagan...
friends and family you've enriched.
That's exactly right, which we're learning about, the outrageous fraud. Ronald Reagan made it clear, says, yeah, we don't have a revenue problem, we got a spending problem. So I hope that answers the question. So yeah, it would be in the case of the state, because we're eliminating the income tax, you're right, that economic growth would have to produce sales taxes. If we were to retain the income tax in general, which is certainly the case at the federal level, it's the case at the state level as well, when our GDP, when our economy expands, that does increase income tax revenue because guess what? Businesses are making more money. They're paying more. Wages go up. They're paying more. And they're spending more. All the above. So we just can't spend more than we can reasonably grow our economy. Coming right back, final segment.
For a flipping good time, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Final segment, Middays. So Joey the trucker said that, he just would like to see, I believe I'm getting this right, Rhino, Amory increase its power capacity to rival Columbus. And no doubt, like we said when we had Senator Bart Williams on, economic developers will tell you that, energy is a key factor in business decisions regarding where to locate projects and make investments. Certainly those that are energy intensive, and that's not just data centers, as you know, that factories and distribution facilities and the like. That's always a challenge and an issue. So appreciate that. Mo says, when push comes to shove and money gets short, we don't know how far the legislature will go. No, you're right, and certainly if the legislature is going to deprive monies that it's currently providing out to the local governments, county, city, school districts, there's limits. They can't raise sales taxes without permission, authorization, legislative authorization. And they also, by statute, they're somewhat limited on what they can do with property taxes. There's some limits on that as well. I don't have all that in front of me, but they can't just go crazy carte blanche on that. There's some thresholds.
I mean, they could. It would just require writing a new law.
Okay, yeah. But at this point, I mean, we have state statute. There's some limitations.
State statutes are put in place by previous legislators. So
exactly.
Current legislators could change state statute.
Well, the same is true for the requirement for the legislature to pass a measure authorizing a municipality or any, right? Same deal. We could certainly reverse that, repeal that, which means that, which is true in most states, by the way, that they can determine and pass at the local level local sales tax options. So it's Alabama and Louisiana, two of our border neighboring states. I'm not sure there's a parish or a municipality in Louisiana or a county or city in Alabama that doesn't have their own local sales tax option.
And if you're talking about just purely principles, in conservative governance, the closer to the people governance and taxation exist, the more conservative the governance is.
Totally right. And somebody on C Spire text line, I know this is a common refrain. People, replace income tax with national sales tax. Everybody pays in, no deduction from salaries. The thing that people don't recognize about all the fair tax plan is this prebate, which essentially means a whole bunch of people don't pay anything. So,
and the only reason that's a part of it is because we have far too many people in this country that vote that are over-emotional and can't wrap their heads around the fact that life ain't fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not fair. I agree. And look, this has been talked about for a long time. And the national sales tax is certainly that a lot of people do support and think would be a more fair and a more effective approach to raising revenue.
It's just never going to go anywhere because the Democrats have convinced the quote-unquote poor in America, even though the poor in America are living high on the hog compared to actual poverty around the world, usually stuck under socialist and communist regimes, or at the very least tyrannical regimes. But no, the Democrats fight against anything even close to a national sales tax or a flat tax because they have convinced themselves and the stupid people that vote for them that it's unfair to poor people.
They exactly. They view it as regressive is the word that's used to describe it. Just means that they want,
because they're unwilling to acknowledge that instead of being at the tyranny of the top 1%, society lives under the tyranny of the bottom 1%.
That is 100% true. It's well put. What we have the most progressive income tax system in the world. In other countries, there ain't a lot of difference between what the top income earners pay and the middle and the lower. And they all pay something. In this country, as we just pointed out, half the households pay nothing, zero. And a bunch of them actually get money from the IRS. And the top 1% are responsible. I looked it up the other day. The latest data, it's down slightly, about 40% of all the income taxes. That's how progressive. And the fear of a sales tax is that it would change that dynamic where folks at the lower and middle incomes would pay a little more relative to today. And the people at the higher income levels would pay less, and they just can't stomach or fathom that. But it would be more fair, more equitable. Everybody would have the so-called skin in the game, as they put it. We are out of here today, coming back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.